Hello and welcome back. I am Matt. With me, as always, is Andy, and we're here to talk about the last two films before the Avengers. They are Thor and Captain America, the First Avenger. Andy, how long has it been since you've seen these movies?
So Thor, I think I actually watched fairly recently because I remember watching some of those Thor stuff before Ragnarok. I would hope that I watched this one and not just suffered through Thor: The Dark World. Captain America had actually been a little longer since I think I introduced my oldest son to the film, so it was kind of fun to revisit these. How about yourself?
I would say that it's been a couple years for both of them, though I think I've seen Captain America more recently than Thor.
Yeah, and so for the first podcast, obviously we were introducing the concept of the show and revisiting Iron Man, which we both still like, but I think we found maybe a little less than our original excitement. And then last week, we kind of gutted it through two lackluster films. For me personally, we're going to get into this more when we talk about each individual ones. I think we're starting to roll a little bit here.
I think so too. I mean, and I have some qualms with one of these movies, and it might not be the one you're thinking of, actually. But it's still a better movie than anything we were watching last week. And it still might be a better movie for me than Iron Man, honestly. So,
all right, so let's get into it. Let's talk about Thor.
Whoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor.
And we're back to talk about Thor. Andy, Thor is not typically considered one of the better Marvel movies. It's one of the forgotten ones, but should it be forgotten?
Definitely, I don't think should be forgotten. I gotta say, I dig this movie. I like it, and I understand why it's not considered one of the elite Marvel films, because it's not. It's not. But I think every time I've watched Thor, I've been pleasantly surprised by my reaction, which something you shouldn't be after watching it multiple times. You should know. But even this time, it was just like, man, I like this film. It should be. People should talk about it more. Generally, what a lot of people like, I didn't bother watching Thor, and then I do think it was dragged down a bit by both the Dark World and probably Age of Ultron to a degree. But I remember like the first time I saw it in theaters, I didn't care at all about Thor. He was a character that frequently bored me. And then I came out of it being like, man, I like that guy. I like Thor. And then I even went out and bought a Thor comic. So I dig it. How about yourself?
I'm honestly the same way. And it's to the point where I had forgotten the fact that I liked this movie until I watched it again. And as I was watching it, I was like, wow, I like this movie. I was not kind of expecting that. I kind of remembered it to be a bit more of a drag than it is. But it's a pretty fun movie, and it moves quick, and it never takes itself too seriously. I'd say the one reason why it might not stick in the collective consciousness more is because I don't know if it has that standout moments. It has a couple really good jokes, but I just don't know if it has that standout moment that you always remember so much of the better movies.
Yeah, I had the exact same take. It's basically, yeah. A lot of the films that are more celebrated, that we talk about more, they do something. They have a bravura sequence that you're really talking about, or something significant, if not a sequence. Of this thing. This is the thing that they do. Maybe the humor of Guardians of the Galaxy, or the suspense of Winter Soldier, or something like that. Or people will really talk about a scene. Thor doesn't have a standout anything. It's just solid all the way through. And the best thing that it does is Chris Hemsworth as Thor is just so likable. And this is before the Ragnarok super funny Hemsworth, although he does some funny things here that we'll get into. But he's obviously starting out playing an arrogant character who needs to fall from grace. But the charming frat boy of Thor approach that he brought to this, I like him. He's just fun, and it's throughout the movie, even if they're not doing a lot of things spectacularly, I just want to be in this world. I like the dude.
Yeah, and the main premise of the movie is based around Thor being a fish out of water in the real world. You're having this godlike figure who talks in this faux Shakespearean talk, and he's in the real world, and he's just throwing it up in there, and he's just getting through on the base of his charm, and that works really well. It works really well for Chris Hemsworth's strengths, and it just works really well with the rest of the cast. And I think that's the thing that I don't remember as well, which is the supporting cast is good in this movie. I mean, so most people remember that Loki's a good villain. He's a very good villain in this movie. The people on Earth, Selvig, Natalie Portman's character, Kat Dennings' character, Natalie Portman's Jane Foster. I forget Kat Dennings' character name.
Darcy something or other. Yeah.
Yeah, Darcy. They're all good characters. They all add a lot. Like the fact that Darcy can never pronounce Mjolnir right is really hilarious.
Yeah, it's like, she is a bit of the voice, and they do it even with him and some like, the pratfalls he takes, is that they recognize that there's a bit of ridiculousness to the entire concept of space Vikings, Yes. And frankly, the best Thor stories have also recognized that like, they play the epicness, the extreme metalness of the Thor, mythos, but they never forget that these are, space traveling Vikings, and it is kind of silly, in the best way. And that's in this movie, especially through the Kat Dennings character, a bit through Eric Selvig himself, will lean into that. Even, somebody who plays it very straight faced in Phil Coulson, is there to remind you that like this, the contrast between, Thor and the Asgardians on our Earth is unusual. And, the movie, recognizes that and thus lets us kind of relax about that.
Right. And you mentioned Coulson. That brings up another thing that I think really works in this movie, which is the S.H.I.E.L.D. plotline. The S.H.I.E.L.D. plotline, I think, works very naturally in this movie, where it was so unnatural in Iron Man 2. But in this movie, it's, you basically have people, basically have S.H.I.E.L.D. out there protecting the hammer, which, fell out of nowhere and no one can lift, and is obviously like special in some way, and they're
isn't doing this. Then what the heck are they doing? What is S.H.I.E.L.D.? They totally belong in this. And in fact, one of the failed integrations of Incredible Hulk, which I mean, it makes sense given the Incredible Hulk story. They've always had Thunderbolt Ross and his Hulkbusters. It was like, where was S.H.I.E.L.D. on that, yo? I mean,
right. Yeah, exactly. Like, I think if they redid Hulk, it would be more of a S.H.I.E.L.D. focused effort to find him, maybe in conjunction with the military or something.
Yeah, and probably the practical real world parts of that is they were filming Incredible Hulk when they decided to throw in S.H.I.E.L.D. and Iron Man. Those ones, came out right away. But yeah, no, I like the Asgardian stuff as well. Obviously, they don't quite have the budget to fully realize it. It's so much, just looking at screensaver pictures of Asgard, but it's still like that's what Asgard would look like. I thought they did a good job of bringing it in, especially at the level of scale that Marvel was at that time. And I think it also kind of was their first attempt at really expanding their universe. Everything before that was set in a, the scariest of scare quotes, but a real world scenario, a real world with, giant monstering Hulks and all of that. But still, our world, our cities, recognizably, our lives. With their fourth film, they go all the way, they take the plunge of, entirely new worlds. We get to see Asgard, we get to see Jotunheim, and I liked it, for the scale that it was at.
Yeah, no, I think that there's a cool idea of Asgard here. As you said, I don't think it's fully realized, but like, you talked about kind of like the metalness of Thor, and I think that kind of comes out in like the costuming, the way that like Asgard is laid out as this like weird hybrid of like science and medieval and, and magic and everything. There's an interesting aesthetic they're going for, but as you said, I don't think they have the budget and the ability to kind of like fully realize it at this point.
Yeah. And then when you're talking about like how it didn't drag as much as you thought. Yeah. Like they get into some action like pretty quickly, right? We get their introduction to Asgard. You get, the first thing is we get Thor getting hit by the car. So that's kind of fun. But then you get a bit of Asgard, Thor, yucking it up for the crowds. And then boom, we're fighting frost giants like about 15, 20 minutes in. And we've been complaining sometimes that they drag a little too long. Thor generally gets for all the pomp that's typically associated with the character, with the faux Shakespearean, which they certainly do, but die down a bit. They remember their action beats. It isn't too long before he's getting thrown out to Earth. It moves. He's fighting S.H.I.E.L.D. Their stuff.
And I actually think, one thing that I think we'll see as we kind of go deeper into the universe and into the more recent movies, I think one of the biggest differences between the more recent movies and the older ones is the more recent ones have a very good sense of how to kind of keep the movie moving. Even though they've gotten longer, they don't feel as long. They don't feel like they're dragging with a lot of these movies. And I think it's because they've kind of learned how to keep them moving. And I think Thor is a movie that keeps moving, even when it's not, doing the action. It strikes the right tone where you're like watching and you're having fun and you're enjoying what's happening there. So Thor, I think, does a really good job of that.
Yeah, and like the earlier movies could, not just because they were still learning, but it's like at that point, it's just interesting and exciting to see somebody become a superhero basically through their building. The character beats of a Tony Stark works, but 4 movies, 6 movies, 10 movies into it, it's like, yeah, we know the protagonist sequence and the basic concept of origin stories. Give me some stuff. And they gave us some stuff. I think the fight with the Frost Giants is pretty solid. They give us lots of hammery goodness.
Yeah, and the other thing about Thor is that he's not a new hero. He's not finding his powers for the first time. He is an established thunder god at this point. Thor's story is more about a coming of age story than an origin story.
Yeah, and that is key. And obviously we still have many origin stories to go, including the next film we will discuss. But yeah, I mean, the biggest success for me is that, I like Thor. I like this guy. I like the characters he interacts with. I think, as you say, there's good chemistry. I actually think the Thor and Jane relationship is pretty solid in this movie. It needs to be
I was going to say it works better than I remember, probably because I remember Thor: The Dark World. So
yeah, and I think that might be part of it, right? And maybe that's showing why our reaction is this way. I think Thor: The Dark World hurt this movie. Thor Ragnarok helps it because we now go into this movie like knowing like we love Thor. Thor is great in Ragnarok. He's the freaking MVP of Infinity War.
Whoa! What about Drax? What about Drax, my man?
What about Drax? No, Thor came in and wrecked shop in Infinity War. I'm not going to get too deep in spoilers, but it's kind of like reminded us, oh yeah, those guys are all cool and all, and they do lots of fighty stuff, but Thor can wreck them all when he needs to be. And frankly, it's why in a lot of these movies he needs to be sidelined. And this movie doesn't, shy away from it in the beginning, where he's just housing frost giants left and right until they do have to sideline him in a bit of a way, just power wise. So yeah, we go into this one already remembering that we love Thor and we love Chris Hemsworth, and you watch this, it's like, oh, that was true right away. Man, did they misstep in the middle?
Yeah.
All right, so before we get into closer details, how about we take a break and then we'll get into the best sequence.
This drink, I like it.
I know, it's great, right?
Another.
And we're back, and we're talking about the best sequence of Thor. Andy, what is your favorite part of Thor?
So yeah, this kind of gets into the earlier discussion of why maybe it doesn't rank among the elite. Is that I actually had a hard time picking out a scene. Generally it's the kind of the vibe and the feel of Thor that I like the most. And I don't know if there's a scene that really stands out more than the others, other than one we're going to get into in our big idea segment. But that's what I'm going to talk about today, this time. So I went with it's a quiet scene.
Okay.
Him and Jane at the campfire after he brings Eric Selvig home from their night out drinking. That one really just kind of hammered home how much I like this Thor, how much I like the chemistry between him and Jane. I like it when he's, obviously, interested in her, but then calmly, talking to her about the cosmos and, Yggdrasil, the world tree and all of that. I just felt like, that scene really kind of crystallized just the overall feeling that I have with Thor is like, this is a good dude.
Yeah. I like that scene too. I think that's the scene where the Jane Thor relationship works best. Like that's the scene where you're kind of like, yeah, no, they do have chemistry here. That works.
And it probably helps that it's like lit really well. Her eyes, sparkle in the light, and as do his. I mean, who knew? Two beautiful people talking to each other could work.
Who would have thunk it?
How about yourself? What do you got?
So my favorite scene is also a small scene because, as you said, this is kind of a movie where I feel like the scenes that I remember are kind of the smaller ones, and it is what I think is one of the best jokes in Marvel, which is when he smashes the coffee cup and yells another. That's a fantastic joke. And I actually found out that they had cut 2 other variations of that joke from the movie. And one cut, I think, was absolutely the right call because apparently he does it right at the beginning of the movie before his like crowning ceremony or whatever. And then Selvig does it when they both get drunk together in the bar. And the Selvig one's actually pretty funny too.
Yeah, that
So
would have been a fun callback, but yeah, I know. You and I chatted about this. It would have totally killed the joke, and that's frankly probably why they cut it. Maybe do it like we need to establish this as a thing that Thor does, and they're like, no, you really don't.
No, you want it to be a surprise because then when it happens, your reaction is just like Jane's, like Darcy's. You're just like, what? I mean,
and it's good that you pick out a funny scene because the humor is a hallmark of this, and it's not the Ragnarok humor, which is end to end, but it's this that made them look at it. It's like, wait, they're like, he's good at telling jokes, he's good at being funny. Let's use that because like when he's fighting all the doctors and nurses, and he's like, "You'll never contain me. I'm the god of thunder," and then they inject him with whatever knocks him out. Right. That is funny, when Darcy and Jane hit him with the van again. That's funny.
Yeah, no. I mean, right. Those are good points. Like again, like as you said, like the humor is not as funny as like the funniest Marvel movies, but it's a lot funnier than you probably remember it being, unless you're also a fan of Thor.
Yeah, and also just an interesting direction for the character of Thor, which in different times in his history, it can be a little over serious or overwrought.
Yes,
and frankly, because it is literally a Nordic myth. They didn't create this guy; they created obviously a version. Stan injected, but
right.
It's a god, and the epic Valkyrie battles of the gods, and everything should either be classical music or heavy metal, and this movie decided, what, let's just have a little bit of fun. Let's inject some fun. And I think it's a hallmark of this movie and frankly, the Marvel universe in general.
And it's also a good way to kind of puncture the pomposity of Thor, because it's easy to be pompous when you're speaking in that faux Shakespearean talk.
Yeah. And that is, a flaw sometimes of the comic books, or basically what I've heard. But even there, every once in a while, they turn him into a frog.
That's true.
What do you got? So yeah, that's when we talked about what we really liked about the movie, and I think on balance, I'm saying for me, and I said at the beginning, I like this movie. This is a good movie. So
I agree.
But I think it was time to talk about the flaws. What do you think is kind of the biggest flaw of?
So I'm gonna pick out something, and I'm gonna need a little bit of explanation. So my biggest flaw is the fight scenes in this movie have good choreography, but they have bad geography. And kind of let me just explain what I mean by that. If you watch a lot of action movies, you'll like a really top-notch fight sequence doesn't just have good choreography, which is the hand-to-hand fight, what they do. But it also has a sense of geography, like where people are in relation to others, where, so, and a good example of this is the Frost Giant scene. The Frost Giant scene has pretty good choreography. It's actually really good at kind of getting at the personalities of all the main people. You get, a sense of who Thor is from how he fights. You get a sense of who Loki is from how he fights. And similar to the Warriors 3 and Sif. You get these senses from that scene, and that's good. But what it doesn't have is this sense of geography. They're surrounded by all these enemies. They have them all around them, but there's no real attention paid to that. It kind of is just, you could really have them just be fighting one guy, and they'll kill that guy and turn around and then cut, and then maybe they're fighting someone else. There's no sense that this horde is actually collapsing in on them. And if you watch a lot of action movies or even a lot of comic book movies, and we'll talk about this actually next week in the Avengers, a sense of geography can actually really help enliven a fight, an action scene.
Yeah, and I think it is especially problematic with the Frost Giants because they look pretty much the same. There's slight differences, but there's there's they'll be fighting, and then they'll keep cutting to King Lofty's reaction to all this, but then they have other Frost Giant who the credits have actually given me a name, and I just finished reading Walter Simonson's Thor run, so I was like, oh, that's actually a guy. I don't know, is he fighting them right now? And then he's looking, and then he's fighting, but they're actually different people in different spaces. And, the relation of where head Frost Giant is to, maybe head henchman Frost Giant, the guy who taunts Thor,
Yeah.
Same guy, but it kind of feels like it is. And then even something like Loki, when he tricks one of the frost giants into falling off a cliff. Where'd you get to that cliff, Loki? And how did you hide behind a wall? Where's this wall even from? Weren't you guys like way out in the open? So yeah,
right. Yeah, it looked like they began in the middle of an arena there, and then suddenly there's like cliffs and walls and there, but like they were just like in the arena pit at first. So yeah, and that's kind of what I mean by geography, and I think that's what keeps that fight scene from being better. Like it's fine. The sense, as I said, the choreography I think is actually good. I just don't think the geography is good, and I think that's what keeps it from being great.
Yeah, and that generally boils down to an editing issue. For me, I think the biggest flaw is in the final battle with the destroyer in the New Mexico town that they're in. It basically looks like that's a cardboard like ghost town. Like it is just not. It just, and obviously they're going for a small town in the desert, but like it could not look like the lowest cost backlot that they could find. Like they just couldn't look cheaper than that.
Yeah, no,
I think that's often like, because that's one of the final scenes, obviously not the final scene. I actually think the sequence where he bashes in the Bifrost is a fairly powerful one.
And I like how he beats Loki by just like letting his hammer rest on him. Yes. They spend the entire movie establishing that no one can lift the hammer, and then he beats Loki by just like dropping on him, and he's pinned to the ground with it.
Yeah, honestly, a strength of the Thor series and even the crossovers is they find fun ways to keep showing what you can do with a hammer. But yeah, I just I think because that is kind of one of the big climactic scenes, and it just feels so underdeveloped, kind of cheap. Basically, it feels cheap. I think that's what has informed a lot of people's opinion about Thor. It's like, oh, that was the one where they were fighting at a ghost town. But the movie is so much more to that. That's actually a small segment.
Yeah, no, and I agree. Yeah, I mean, and that's like really my biggest flaw with it. Like, there's not really anything else I'd pick out too much. I think Loki's logic is a little tortured at the end, but Hiddleston plays it well enough that I'm like going along with him.
Yeah, and that's a key, to get good actors who will just not be embarrassed by it. Obviously, Anthony Hopkins goes really big, but go really big. Like when he just snarls at Loki, yeah, that's fine. Like that's what you get in Anthony Hopkins for, is that he's just going to sell out on the performance. And I mean, the entire concept of being Odin is ridiculous, and you wouldn't want like an American actor who feels it. Frankly, the next movie will have people in it that are letting broadcasting through their very actions that they do not agree with the garbage that they're being delivered. He gets really hammy, but you can't say that Anthony Hopkins is sleepwalking through this performance, except of course when he is in the Odin sleep.
Right.
All right. But yeah, in general, I think this is a solid B if I was grading it, but a B that I really enjoy. When I am done watching Thor, I just kind of I like that.
I feel the exact same way.
All right. When we come back, we're going to talk about Captain America: The First Avenger.
You just don't know when to give up, do you?
Hang on this all day.
And we're back. As you can see, we have a visit here by Captain America himself. And as you can see, that just like in the Marvel movies himself, he's played by a man named Chris. Christopher, what do you like about Captain America?
I like it how he can jump really high.
Yeah? And do you like his shield?
Yeah, and also I like it how he has a gun and blocks with his shield. And he jumps off his shield. I mean, Alex.
Uh-oh, Cap, you gotta save us. There we go. The famous scene when Captain America punches out Charlie Chaplin, right? That's what it is. Matt's now trying not to talk.
I don't want to pull attention away from the stars here.
All right, Adolf, out of here. That's right. All right, Cap. Did you want to show us any more Captain America moves?
Where's the gun?
I don't know. I think you took it out of the room and didn't bring it in. So,
wait, Matt.
just wait here, Matt.
This, Daddy?
Yes. There we go. There's Cap. All right. I think Matt is an agent of Hydra. Boom.
I'm going through the next.
All right, now what? When he doesn't shoot, how else does he take his enemies out? Does he throw that? Maybe throw it that way though.
On the bed?
Yeah. That was intense. I didn't expect it to go slam against the wall. All right. Yeah. Do you have any other Captain America moves that you need to do? His jump, right? You said you like it when he jumps so high. Okay. This time we're going to capture more of this on film. There we go. All right.
I want to shoot the list of the board.
No, that's enough for that. Are you ready to go to bed?
I can do this all day.
The tree line is northwest, 80 yards past the gate. Get out fast and give him hell. I'll meet you guys in the clearing with anybody else I find.
Wait, you know what you're doing?
Yeah, I've knocked that Adolf Hitler over 200 times.
And we're back, and we're here to talk about Captain America, the First Avenger. Andy, what was your reaction to Captain America, the First Avenger?
So I've always been a fan of this movie since the first time I saw it, and some of it is similar to Thor. It's because I like the character, the way it makes me feel. But I'm actually kind of more interested in your reaction because I think that for the first time in this podcast, we might actually have a disagreement here.
Yeah, I think we might. It's not going to be a strong disagreement. The thing about this movie is it's always struck me as the sum is less than the parts. And I remember when I first watched it, I remember thinking, oh, I think I like Thor better than this movie. And then the second time I watched it, this was after kind of the subsequent Captain America sequels. I really like Captain America a lot more from Avengers and Winter Soldier. And then I was like, oh, no, I like Captain America. I'm going to like this movie more. And just people I generally respect really like this movie. And I still like Thor more than this movie. And this movie kind of leaves me a little lukewarm. And this time, again, I came in expecting something to be different, and it wasn't. It's and it's tough for me to pinpoint exactly everything there is, but I will try to when we talk about the flaws. But my general reaction to this movie is I think it's okay. I don't get the hype for it that some people have, and as I said, I think the sum is not. Does not work as well as the component parts.
And whereas for me, I think this is clearly the best of the films that we've watched so far. And part of it is, I love the character. And frankly, I've always had a bit of an attachment to the Captain America character, even though, kind of funny and incongruent in some ways. And then some of that is actually because I've always been a little drawn in comics to the leader type figure, the stoic leader, what some people might think the boring type leader, but yeah, Captain America has that, but he has this innate goodness to him that, it just shines through this movie. And that's, I think, Chris Evans' biggest strength in, his entire history with this character is that, he will let that goodness, just flow, and he doesn't shy away from it. They're not afraid of it being earnest. Obviously they set this in the past and they made it super earnest, which both felt period appropriate. And they hired a director who already had made a World War II-ish earnest film in The Rocketeer. It's just like I just dig it. I dig Steve Rogers throughout. I don't know why I keep saying dig through this whole podcast. And then I gotta say, watching it now in 2018 makes me feel like I more need just to feel some a character, a hero who has a sense of decency, maybe even more than I needed it in 2011.
I guess for me, the more appropriate Captain America film for 2018 is Captain America 2, The Winter Soldier, because, it feels like that decency comes right up against, kind of the entrenched evils in our own government of today. And I feel that one speaks to me a little more in these days.
Oh, absolutely. Like this would be like, longing for a past that never existed. I just want to live for 2 hours in the world where heroes get to be heroes. And this guy has a moral conscience that guides him and his nation, and it's just like, that meant more to me. And frankly, I was recognizing this movie, very clearly set the similar tone that Wonder Woman did, for instance. And it's like Wonder Woman obviously was a huge hit, whereas First Avenger, like, it did okay, but it wasn't big. Now, different factors. For one, the superhero, Wonder Woman got to ride on the back of the superhero wave. Now people are going to those movies. Secondly, Wonder Woman is a much bigger deal than Captain America, and what this Wonder Woman represented. But otherwise, what was great about that movie was that it brought us to a past where the hero followed their own moral compass and did what was right. So it's like, if you loved Wonder Woman, I think you should give Captain America: The First Avenger another try if you haven't yet.
Right. No, and I would agree with that. I think they are very similar movies, and even though Wonder Woman's set in World War I, they're basically telling the same story. I think I wonder if sometimes the World War II setting, in a way, actually hurts the movie for me. And this is something that I'm not entirely sure about, but there's something kind of, I think, simplistic and that kind of elides the horror of Nazis if you just turn them all into Hydra instead, because he never fights Nazis, he fights Hydra, and they're in fact specifically referred to as Hydra. And it's like, you had Nazis there, he could just be fighting Nazis, but of course it's comic book, so he fights Hydra. And he's not just fighting the Third Reich, he's fighting the souped up Red Skull superpower guys. But again, he's a superhero, so he's supposed to be doing that.
Yeah, no, it is a tough balance. And frankly, skip ahead for this for me. I had actually a hard time finding a flaw. I kind of feel this movie is, not quite flawless, but it's a hard thing to pick up. But the one thing is, it's a little tough to see World War II brought to this, except that it would probably be tougher the other way. It'd probably be a worse mistake to try and actually make him be taking down Nazis. Having it set in World War II, which is obviously, what the character represents and where the origin was. And I think it was the right choice to stick to that origin. Not that I'm somebody who believes that the movies can never play with it, but I think it's central to the Captain America character that he is a man out of time and, of that particular time. And then,
exactly. Captain America and the Avengers, Captain America and the Winter Soldier doesn't work as well as he does if we don't see him in World War II. Because in World War II, he's a man of his time. Now, he's an exceptional man of his time, and that's something that I like about the movie. I really like the way Chris Evans plays him. I really like the characterization he has here. But the fact that you have to see that to make his man out of time shtick work better,
Yeah, and they can't future jump it, It's a very different character if Captain America was in the Vietnam War or something, right? Like, it has to be this war. It has to be coming from that time with, that set of, values, imaginary or not, whether they were ever truly true. And to your point, the movie does a good job that shows that Steve Rogers is exceptional. He isn't the everyman of 1942 that they, had us believe that, we could make great again. He is actually set out much different than almost every other character in the movie. Even the other good men and women don't possess the same level as Steve Rogers. So I do think they show that even back then, he was fighting bullies, he was fighting some level of discrimination. Obviously not too deep, but
I mean, we don't know. He had a black guy in his Howling Commandos. He had an Asian guy. I think they even make some joke. They make a joke about the Asian guy. That he should have been hauled off for being Japanese, and he has to correct them and stuff like that. I mean, I think they do make that kind of pass at inclusion, and I think Captain America is a character that does. That's kind of bone deep in him anyway. Captain America, I think, is an inclusive person.
And frankly, this is the key to the Captain America character. And for people who, would think maybe he's, boring, stuffy, or frankly, maybe not interested in the very idea of, a symbol of America being a moral authority for the world. He is the America that America pretends that it is going to be. Yes. And the comics and the movies have never shied away from the fact that America frequently fails to meet that ideal. And when that happens, Steve Rogers will stand apart from it. He will stand up for injustices, even injustices caused by America itself. And that, frankly, is why a foreigner like me can be so drawn to the character, because, you know, there is something, you know, elusive or interesting and seductive about like the American story, you know, the fairy tale that they tell the world about themselves. That, you know,
Sure.
it's like, you know, the foundations that they sold, you know, were very enlightened ideas, even if they were, you know, complete hypocrisy. And it's things like that's why, you know, everybody gets so excited, and, you know, there's no cats in America, and, you know, the streets are made of cheese. Like, it's just like there's an America out there of the fantasy that is appealing, and, you know, to the world, and Captain America is a symbol of that. If, you know, if only America could, you know, live up to this symbol.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true.
All right, and I think then we should get back to the movie itself, and we'll talk about the best sequence.
How do you feel?
Taller.
You look taller.
And we're back, and we're here to talk about our best sequence. I'm going to go first this time because Andy went first last time, and I want to talk about one of my favorite scenes in pretty much any Marvel movie. I really love this scene, and it was apparently improv. It's when he first transforms, he comes out of the chamber, and Haley Atwell approaches him and just kind of like reaches out to touch, and then pulls her hand back. I really love that scene. I think it is one of the best expressions of lust that any Marvel movie has, like on-screen lust. You know, I don't think you actually see any other character openly lust in the way that she does in that moment. And we'll be talking more about the female gaze later in the podcast, but I wanted to highlight that scene because that is an exceptional scene.
Yeah, in that moment, she was the audience.
The audience.
And frankly, let's be real. Most of the audience, almost the entire audience, because we all wanted to see if it was real too. Because it frankly looks cartoonish how big he got. You know, he really blasted some X, and you just almost have to, you know. And you say nobody's ever had that. Like, it's just such a pure moment of thirst that is just so perfect.
Exactly.
Because, you know, I mean, we do get Natalie Dormer later in the movie, you know, also lusting after him in a more, you know, Natalie Dormer way, because if you cast her, you're going to have her be, you know, a seductress and such. But I agree. That's, you know, it is a fun scene. It's great. I also went with something small, and that I think just is what really stands out for me, and it's in the middle of a bigger scene, but really it's just about this part of the scene. It's in the battle with the final battle against the Red Skull. And it's just this perfect encapsulation of what a hero is, and, you know, what makes Steve Rogers a superhero is that while they're fighting, Red Skull asks him, "Don't you ever give up?" And he just quickly, you know, and it's succinctly and is an economically, definitionally of a hero, just says nope. And there, that defines what a hero is to me.
You know, there's a couple points in this movie where I basically said to myself, like, that defines Cap, that defines a hero, because he has multiple moments of himself. I think the other great moment, one of the other great scenes of this movie is when he's in basic training and he throws himself on the grenade. And this is Uncanny Valley skinny Cap, you know? This is that weird looking version of him. And he throws himself on the grenade when everyone else, all the perfect soldiers, run away.
Yeah, and it's just like this movie does that frequently, as you say, you know, and obviously there's the moment that they call back to in this movie, and then later in Civil War, where he's just like, you know, getting, you know, beaten down. He's just like, I can do this all day. And it's just like this movie is never afraid of, you know, earnestly showing what a good person Steve Rogers is and what it means to be a hero. And that's probably why I love it so much, because frankly, that's not necessarily true of all superhero movies. And I think it's something that, you know, both of these movies we talked about, and we're going to talk about this more next week, what Marvel started to do is like, you know what? No, our heroes are going to be heroes. And frankly, you can't make a Captain America movie any other way unless you're really interested in making a terrible one. I should say, there's somebody who would find a way, since they did make a Superman movie that without him ever being a hero. But yeah, it's just like, you know, he is unabashedly, unironically heroic, and you know, that moment just really crystallizes it for me.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think the earnestness of him, the earnestness and the way the movie plays him, I think is the right way to play him. You know, I think that works, and I think that's good. You know, I think you might have a thought that I dislike this movie more than I do. I don't. It's just that, I think there are a lot of people that love this movie, and I'm okay on it.
I've seen some people put it like top 5. I'm not there either, right? It's
Okay.
like that seems like it's kind of like almost like a hipster idea. It's like, oh yeah, this is the one you forgot.
Sure.
No, it's might not even be in my top 3 Captain America. Well, it was in my top 3 Captain America movies.
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure it has to be that. But
it might not be in the top 2. But I still really love it because I love him. I love Steve Rogers. I love Captain America. And frankly, I also love the relationship between him and Peggy Carter.
I do too, and I was about to bring that up too. And this actually segues really well into kind of one of the flaws for me. So I want to talk about why that works, and then kind of how that relates to the flaw. It works because she's there the entire time. She's there for the entire movie. It's built up, and it's kind of this like old-fashioned movie. Like they're never going to get together. They're always kind of kept at arm's length, and then they finally get that kiss, and then they lose each other. And that final moment they have together on the plane over the radio is like a really affecting moment.
Yeah, it was a runner-up for my best sequence.
Yeah, that's a great moment. And one, they have Haley Atwell, who's incredible. She's stupendous, and it's a real shame that they had to not waste her, but they used her on a movie where they can't bring her back to the other movies unless they take her and
makeup or
right. Or unless they do some like time stone shenanigans in a future movie. So
or dream sequence in a previous movie. Yeah.
Dream sequence also works. But I think that actually kind of also brings up in some ways in that this movie doesn't work for me, which is this movie is kind of made up of a lot of different movies. And, I think even the people that like it will agree with me there. You have like his like origin story. Then you have him on the USO tour. Then you have like the beginning of him as a soldier. And then you kind of have like the end sequence. And, you have basically 3 different movies. You have origin story, USO tour, war movie at the end. And the characters that appear in each sequence pretty much don't appear in the other ones. And it's all except for Captain America and Peggy Carter.
And then a little bit Tommy Lee Jones at least appears in 2/3.
Yeah, he's actually the other one. And Bucky kind of appears right at the beginning and then briefly in the war movie part before we lose him again. So, there are like a few characters that pop up here and there, but there's no kind of like super present supporting character except for Peggy Carter, which is, I think, why their relationship works. But you have people like the Howling Commandos. The Howling Commandos are like, they're all colorful characters, but we get nothing with them, basically.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if Dum Dum Dugan is like named. It's just he's the guy with the hat and the mutton chops and beard.
I think he actually is named, but I'm not positive. I don't think the other ones are though. Right. So during that part, you have like these guys, and they're basically just kind of sticking around, and you only know them because they look different from each other. And there's a lot they could do there, but the fact is, because this movie had to do so much, it had to hurry through everything. And that's kind of the other reason. This movie was never intended to be anything other than lead up to the point of getting Cap to the present day. And so they both had they had this task where they wanted to make it fun. So they introduced all these really interesting characters, and then they had to discard them as they went along. So you have, all these things, all these ideas, all these settings that they have, which are a lot of fun, and they have to rush through them. And I think one of the things about the movie one of the reasons why it doesn't work better for me is that it actually does feel like they're rushing. And we talked about how Thor was a movie that never I never felt like it was slow. Captain America, on the other hand, I felt like it moves too fast at times, even though I think it's longer than Thor.
Yeah, in some ways it's kind of like a prequel, but not, right? It's like they started with the prequel because it's very much like this is, the origin. And if you're kind of looking at it from like, the overall perspective of the entire MCU, this is one of the ones that completely stands out because, as you say, only one character really, and then later actually a second one emerges from it. But otherwise, it is an entirely different world, and not even like a Guardians of the Galaxy type thing. So maybe legacy wise, this thing doesn't have as much, draw. Because so much of it is,
right. I mean, and it has to do so much work to kind of get him to the point where he's ready for the future that I feel that takes away from it in some ways too.
Yeah, like, and it had to cover like 10 years of Captain America stories in one.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a thing that superhero movies used to always have to do. They'd have to try and tell the whole story. That's why Gwen Stacy always has to die and everything. Jean Grey always has to die because like we got to condense all these now. Because Marvel's realizing, it's like, we're just always going to make movies that they can focus maybe a little more narrow on like a specific story as opposed to, trying to do the entire character. So
Right.
I can see what you're saying, but I like all those segments. So, US Outdoor is great, And I'm not saying you're not saying that it isn't.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I enjoy the USO tour. It just feels like a different movie than the first and third part. And so, so it's kind of like, it's so like just again, like I watch, like, it's a movie that if you're flipping through TV, you see 1/3 of it, you can just enjoy that third and turn the TV off.
Yeah, and for me, I would say, if you want to escape right now and into a superhero movie, this might be a good one because there's plenty of things to escape from right now. When we come back, we're gonna talk some trivia.
What do you think?
Yes, I think it works.
All right, welcome back. It is time now for our weekly trivia segment where I make Matt look foolish every week. Isn't that how it goes?
That's how it goes. I'm one of these weeks I'm gonna win.
All right. Well, to help in that pursuit, we've actually changed the format a bit. Because we decided that it's a little unfair that I get to hear the Games Master through my actual ears right here. You have to wait until it travels through all the tubes and pipes that make up the web. So what we'll do is he will ask us individual questions for the first 4.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll have the 5th one will be
tiebreaker,
the buzzer. That's right.
Okay.
All right. Who are you asking first, Alex?
I'm gonna ask you.
Okay. And then a little note: if for some reason one of us can't get a question after the allotted time, the other person can steal. Let's do that.
That's good.
Which character in Captain America has the coolest hat?
Well, this seems to be more of a judgment call.
My judgment.
Then
no, it's not a judgment call.
Yeah, rather than a trivia. But I know you, and I know what you're asking. You are asking about Dum Dum Dugan.
Yeah.
Because we read about him in a comic book once where he is now a life model decoy and he leads a team of howling commandos that are actually monsters. Comics, everyone.
Wow. Okay.
All right, point for me. Stop kicking the table, Quizmaster.
I'm kicking my chair now.
Stop kicking everything, please.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna ask you. I'm asking you, Matt, now.
Okay.
Where on Earth was Thor's hammer found?
It was found in New Mexico.
Yeah.
See, I totally would have stolen that from you. So this new format, Matt has a chance.
Yeah, I do.
What are the names of the Warrior 3 in Thor?
Oh, I always get this wrong too. So there's Hogan the Grim, there's Vandrel the Dashing, and it's the third guy who his name is a play on Falstaff because he's basically a Falstaffian character. And honestly, I just read Thor last night, and he was in it. And he's
Tell me when I can steal. Tell me when I can steal. I'm gonna come in
enormous.
Here.
He's the Valiant. He's Volstagg the enormous. Yes.
Oh, you got a point.
Ooh, that was close.
For Matt this time.
Okay.
How did Steve Rogers get the flag during training?
How did he get the what during training?
Flag.
The flag. Oh, he removed the pin at the bottom of the thing and let it fall down and picked it up off the ground.
Yeah.
He removed the pin from the bottom of the pole.
Point. Ooh, this is intense now.
Yeah.
All right,
Easiest question.
we're tied 2-2, so this is it. This is apparently it's easy, so it'll just be who gets it first.
Okay.
How many years was Captain America in ice?
Oh man, I was told there would be no math.
He was in ice for
Let's say
65.
Oh, okay, you said 65. I am going to say, because we're going to do closest to the pin here.
Yeah.
I am going to say he was in there for 70.
Oh, come on. He went in and...
I mean, the problem is we have to decide what year this movie takes place. So that's a bit of...
Right. Well, it has to take place before Avengers. Avengers was 2012. He went in ice in 44 or 45.
You know, as a history major, I should know when the war in Europe ended, but I do not.
Well, but he doesn't go in ice when the war
that wasn't the absolute last moment of the war, because
exactly.
Actually, the Red Skull wasn't leading the Nazi army, from what I remember. Right.
He was not.
So, anyway, what's important is that I won, even though, I mean, I also...
Well, what was the actual year they said in the movie?
He just has 70 years written down here.
Oh, okay. Fair enough, then.
So, Alex, we watched these movies this week. So now it's time for me to customarily ask you what you thought of them, and then you're going to give a hand gesture that doesn't play well at all on radio, and maybe some grunt out an answer or two. What did you think of this week's movies?
Captain America: First Avenger was fine. Thor was meh.
Was fine. That's not how you've been talking about it.
Fine is better than meh?
No. Captain America: The First Avenger was awesome. Thor was meh.
Okay.
No, it was cozy.
I think that's Italian.
Okay.
Apparently, he's a tough audience. All right. That's enough out of you. Anything else you'd like to say?
I was Hitler.
Yeah.
We got that.
We figured that out, yeah. I think everybody... Well, I guess for the people who aren't listening to us on... just listening and not watching, that'll sound great out of context. I might cut it.
You do not cut that. I was Hitler.
Yeah.
Maybe cut that one.
All right. Good night.
You know, for a crazy homeless person, he's pretty cut. Hey, sorry I tased you.
And we're back, and we're here talking about our big idea. You may have noticed the past couple weeks when we've mentioned that how the early films engage with the male gaze, but that changes here. Whereas before, attractive women were presented as sexual objects, now Thor and Captain America are presented as the sexual objects, and we are engaging with the female gaze. And to do that, we have some special guest stars with us. First, we have Emily, and we have Kim.
Oh, hi. Sorry.
Yeah, you guys can say hi at that point. You don't have to be. You don't have to always be silent.
There was no pause.
I know. It's like you had to be like
pause.
But yeah, we wanted to discuss this, and then I thought it was important. If we're focusing on Marvel finally including the ladies, to actually include some. And then after we kind of discuss this portion of it, we have, I think, a little segment that you guys are going to find fun that works better if the people speaking are, sexually attracted to men. But yeah, I think the first thing to talk about, and what we're kind of getting at is in Iron Man multiple times, women are presented, just to be sexy. There's, the pole dancing flight attendants. There's the, Iron Girls dancers. Even in Incredible Hulk, you have the Brazilian supermodel, like bottling depot worker who, who apparently is also, his neighbor who just came out of a shower when Bruce Banner comes by, which is, a very classic 80s action film. Only in those they didn't wear the towel. This time they changed that, and I think in a pretty significant way with Thor, that when he is introduced after being knocked out and he's on Earth, he just struts around with his shirt off. And I don't think that was subtle. I don't think that was accidental. I do think there's a bit of reasons and a bit of history behind that. Is Chris Hemsworth, when he got the part, asked how big he should get, and they're like, as big as you can, and he took that to heart. So they wanted to show it. In fact, he put on so much muscle.
So noble.
Yes. Hey,
one for the team.
He's a professional, and as his first big break, it makes sense. I mean, he was doing this for his whole family, right? He needed to make Thor work, so like all his brothers could get jobs in Hollywood.
Well, mostly the one brother. Just the one.
No, hey, the other brothers on Westworld occasionally.
Yeah, like the mutant third brother.
Yeah,
The deformity one.
Is he questionably engaged to Miley Cyrus, or maybe not?
Yeah, the Stephen Baldwin of the Hemsworth family. But apparently he got.
I don't even know his name.
He didn't fit his costume anymore. That's dedication for Hemsworth.
Wow.
Damn.
And then for Captain America, and obviously this makes sense story purposes. They do want to show that scrawny Steve Rogers becomes, but they really indulge in that scene. And you don't get more of a nod to the female gaze than the woman in the scene.
Oh yeah.
Just needing to touch it.
Yep.
And I feel like these aren't just
content.
exceptions. I think from this point on, you always get that scene in every Marvel movie. The male protagonist always has to have a shirtless scene to show the work that he's put in. So, we'll start with Emily. What do you think? Are we on to something that the female gaze is kind of a standard part of the Marvel movie experience at this point?
Well, to be honest, I have not seen Iron Man since it came out on DVD, so I don't super remember. And I've not seen Incredible Hulk or Iron Man 2 at all. So
that's fine, because none of those will really show you this, other than Tony Stark sometimes wears tank tops. And in fact, in his one shirtless scene, he looks just like this doughy mass because they put a fake chest on him.
Yep.
Kim was like, did they just do reshoots? Because in one scene he has definition, and the other he's just me with a shirt off. So
hey, you know what? That's my bad. Like, I was just, I think, certain, because you're saying at this point, I thought you were saying like it had been male gaze and then shifted to female gaze. So that's on me. But yeah, I mean, that definitely, I think that's, a big focus, especially I feel like with Thor more due to Kat Dennings' character constantly just being like, wow, which, same.
But then, like, you get future movies, like Fat Chris Pratt suddenly is like ripped Star-Lord, And
the trailer for that, where they have, I mean, it's obviously in the movie too, but they're like sure to show in the trailer when he's like looking, like the one time he's like more serious and angry, and it's all just like ripped muscles and looking down and like, and we're like, wow, okay.
Right, yeah. And who could forget that Michael B. Jordan caused a girl to break a retainer? I mean, so this is something that's continued.
Well, thank God I'm past my retainer days.
And when you point out with the trailer, all of these shots, or most of these shots, actually end up making the trailer too. The Thor one does, the Captain America one does. I believe we get ripped Paul Rudd in both Ant-Man and the trailer. Oh, no. Paul Rudd, romantic comedian Paul Rudd, has to take his shirt off. Everybody does it. I bet Benedict Cumberbatch might have, not that anybody cares.
Oh, no.
So yeah, I do think this is a real thing.
I'll just assume. I don't know.
I don't think Brie Larson's gonna do it. Just putting that one out there, exactly. But maybe, I don't know.
And you kind of see that shift, because in Iron Man 2, and obviously Emily can't speak to this. I believe you watched it on your iPad.
I think so. Yeah.
No, I wasn't. But when we're introduced to Black Widow, we literally get Tony Stark's POV of staring as she bends forward and into the ring. I think in every subsequent movie, she is not filmed that way. And I say this not to say that Marvel is necessarily like this bastion of feminism. I think it's because they recognized there is money to be had in letting women know that there is something here in these movies for them.
Yeah. Guys are going to see these movies because they like comic books, they like action movies, but there's a whole half of the audience out there they can appeal to too.
And to be clear, certainly some women also love comic books. And,
yes, I didn't want to suggest otherwise. Yes, yeah, of course. Right, but I'm saying,
I do think like the encounters are like, hey, we've got these attractive men. They work out for these roles. No harm in showing it. And if you look at the numbers, Marvel obviously does fairly well for themselves. Now, I mean, I'm guessing the DC universe also had like Batfleck, workout. No, did he? I mean, you watched that movie. I did not.
I watched it. I don't remember, honestly.
But I do think it is.
I know people pointed out that like in Wonder Woman, they did not have, shots of Wonder Woman like in that way, and that allegedly in Batman versus Superman, which I definitely didn't see, they had They had,
Oh,
several more like objectifying shots. And also, to prove your point, I did not see any of these Marvel movies in theaters until Captain America, and I can't even remember why I saw it in theaters, but I did.
Maybe you saw that trailer. Maybe you saw that trailer, and you were like, "That I am there. I have to reach out."
I mean, that's definitely what happened in Black Panther.
That's right. He booked that one.
You guys
I don't even know what Black Panther is.
Yeah.
Is it a guy? I don't know. It's just, but that I'm gonna see. Yeah, and actually, it's interesting to bring up Wonder Woman, the most Marvel of the DC movies, because Chris Pine, who should be in Marvel because his name is Chris, is like naked in it. So yeah, no, I mean, I think Marvel did start something in it.
Yeah. He's very attractive too.
So
he doesn't even need the naked. You just have the eyes, and you're good.
So because Marvel has introduced the female gaze, and welcome, hey, look at these, gleaming hunks of beef we have for you. We thought we'd, in that vein, also continue to objectify these characters and actors with a game that we're going to call the Hot or Not MCU Edition. So we brought the ladies here to discuss which of the following Marvel characters are hot or not. I mean, people think that we're chickening out. Matt and I could have this conversation. We are comfortable men, but at the same time, it's kind of like asking somebody who doesn't like sweets to like describe desserts. It's like you can do it, but you're kind of maybe missing part of the essence.
Yeah, it's kind of like we've heard what's good, but we don't we don't have the same taste of it. We can't describe why it's good.
That's right. And also, like, it's not as fun a game to have two dudes in 2018 to just be, talking about all the hot women on the screen. Plus, it's also just not that interesting because, like, they're professional actresses in Hollywood. They are all attractive. Like, so, Black Widow.
Hot.
Attractive.
Gamora.
Hot.
Nakia.
Hot.
Peggy Carter.
Very hot.
Aunt May.
Disturbingly hot.
So it's kind of like that. It wouldn't really be a lot of fun or nuance in the conversation. So we're gonna stick to the guys, and I promise you, we're gonna let the ladies speak. Since this is what this episode is about, let's start with. And we should clarify: we're talking about these actors as these characters. So if you never found Chris, whoever, attractive before,
Chris name.
There's so many Chris's.
There's so many.
Like my son drew some pictures and he signed it. It's like, is he talking about the character or himself?
Yeah. Right.
No more talking about my sons in this segment. All right, let's start with Thor.
Hot. I think he's
conditional.
What did you say?
It's conditionally hot, apparently.
Conditionally hot.
Why is it conditional?
You
depends on the movie.
Yes, it's true. Yes.
Thor 1, not hot. Blonde eyebrows, weird. Too weird. Distracts from. Well, and I will also say, though, this is going to be important. I am very much a face person. So the face is key. A male butterface, is a tough one for me. I did not see Thor 2, so I can't speak to that.
It would not change your opinion one way or the other.
Well, he might have not had that weird.
I think maybe he might have lost that because it is the dark world, so they probably darkened those out.
Yeah. In the Avengers, they had normal eyebrows. But in Thor Ragnarok, when he also has shorter hair, because I'm not really a long hair person, then for sure.
Okay, we should actually quickly clarify here that we have past evidence of Emily being really bad at discussing male attractiveness.
That was one time I corrected it, and also because that has since been topical. I think I almost even mentioned this to you today. I think my real crime in that incident was just relying on memory and nostalgia, not going back and researching. So I was, some of that involved what my taste was when I was very young, and people change and develop. And
over the years, as Emily
very
spent
important.
More time with us, she has become much bro-ier about stuff like this. So we can trust more of her judgment. But if you feel like she's not, doing enough a good job, and also my a beautiful wife, about objectifying men, please feel free to let us know, because you did the last time. And one other note we wanted to talk about, and when I talk about last time, it's a different show for people who didn't watch the show. Obviously, we were just getting a female perspective of people who are attracted to men. There is another audience of people who are attracted to men that I think Marvel has also successfully appealed to, but it's already going to be a mess talking to 4 people here. So,
That's true.
but please feel free to join, add that perspective in comments below. You're more short-haired Thor than long-haired Thor,
Yes,
right?
I'm not a long hair person at all. I like the short hair, and so the whole long hair thing that people are doing these days, I don't like it. So yeah, Thor Ragnarok was like where it was. It was
hard agree. That was like I saw, because as I said, I didn't see Thor 2, and I didn't really like the first Thor, and I didn't see it, and I think I saw it after Avengers, and was like. So I wasn't necessarily going to see it, but then there was, Taika Waititi and all that, and people were like, oh, it's really good. And also I saw the trailer. I was like, oh, short hair. Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Good to know.
Love the short hair.
All right. Next, Captain America.
Always attractive. Yep. Chris Evans does it every time for me. I love Captain America. Just 'cause he's such a nice guy, and he's gorgeous and honorable and brave and all that jazz, and he's a great body and he looks great. Yep. I say hot.
Yeah, I'd say Captain America is also one, at least of the main Avengers, like my favorite of the franchise too. And yeah, Chris Evans, good job. Way to go.
All right, so there's a bit of a controversy when it comes to Captain America and his hotness that we need to discuss. How much did they drop the ball by having him leave his shirt on when he's like ripping the helicopter back to the building in Winter Soldier? Or Civil War. Sorry.
Civil War. That's Civil War.
To happen without his shirt on?
They could have found a reason. In the fight, it gets torn away or something.
You go. Okay, well, I guess if you found a reason,
sometimes like a little left to the imagination can work for women too.
No good.
And then one more clarification: beard or no beard?
Both.
Yep, yeah, both.
Yeah,
it works either way.
All right. So speaking of
non-discriminating
beard, speaking of long hair.
Bucky. What about Bucky?
Yeah, hot either way. But Winter Soldier Bucky, it's like I know I shouldn't, but I still do. Like it's not. I think the long hair is counteracted by my old emo self, where I'm like broody eyeliner, like dark eye makeup people, and I'm like, yes, let's listen to Panic at the Disco together. Great.
See, for me, Bucky, I actually forgot about Bucky and Captain America because I'm like, oh, he's so good looking. I get it now. But yeah, Winter Soldier Bucky is like dark, brooding, like you said. Doesn't talk much. The happy-go-lucky pluck of his life is gone. Yeah, he doesn't do it for me. And he's kind of greasy, the hair,
So you're saying you're not as interested in men who don't talk much?
Well, they think you talk a lot. We all know in real life you don't really talk.
Yeah, very broody. Yeah. Also, so what you're saying is Bucky needs to take a shower. Winter Soldier,
big time shower, and get himself a haircut.
So I think I probably prefer original Bucky, but I'm still good with Winter Soldier. But an important caveat is that I definitely prefer brunettes, and I'm not really into blondes. And so many of the Chris's, at least, are blondes. That it's a nice change of pace.
Okay. What about Loki?
Yeah, the internet's boyfriend, Tom Hiddleston.
Not.
Oh, interesting.
A friend of mine will definitely, as if she would ever watch this, but if a friend of mine knew I was saying this, she would be very upset, but not.
But isn't Loki the goth boyfriend? Isn't,
Well, goth and emo are very different.
Oh, good point. Yeah, you said emo. Yeah, sorry. My fault there.
We are way less legitimate.
I actually, what was pretty amazing, I forgot how young he looked. So in like the first Thor there, he was like a baby. And so that made me feel a little weird because he was a baby. And yeah, no, he's aged fine. He's a baby, and he's kind of just, not.
Wait, how old was he in the first one? How old is he now?
I don't know, but he's like, what? He must be in his 30s.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
he was, not that young, but he looks significantly
Like he looks like
younger
there's
in this.
no wrinkles. Like he just looks very baby faced and very
All right.
thin. So yeah.
I'm gonna skip ahead here because we're talking about looking like a baby and how it might be uncomfortable. How about Spider-Man? Tom, the other Tom.
Can't do it. I cannot judge the poor kid. He's a child as
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned. I know he's not in high school in real life, so that made me feel better. But now as I get older, we're hitting some weird space. That I don't
Yeah,
I gave him a shirtless scene.
I have a well,
Oh,
you know,
he did.
teenagers are gonna see that. I have a friend who she's a couple years younger than me, and this was also when it came out. So I think she was like 23 or 24 when the trailer for Spider-Man came out, and like immediately Googled him and like had a deep sigh of relief that he was 20. Now, yeah, I mean, I actually really like Spider-Man. Like, I think up with Captain America of my like comic book movies, because I don't read comics at all, like have always been a big Spider-Man person. But yeah, he just doesn't even, part of it is just I'm getting too old for that, but it just doesn't really, I can see the appeal. It's just not for me.
And also, he isn't your preferred Spider-Man, right?
Oh no.
Right.
not
And
mine.
let it be clear that I know that those movies are not good.
Is it Tobey Maguire?
No.
Yeah,
No,
Emily's
those movies are
all
good.
Tobey Maguire first, and she
I
talks
think
about him all the
I'm
time.
an Andrew Garfield as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Andrew
Andrew
Garfield. Also, this is like really bad, but actually the same coworker who looked at Tom Holland, she and I, there's a part in the first Andrew Garfield Spider-Man where he's like asking out Gwen Stacy, where he like bites his lip. And we found a GIF of that and just like watched it for 15 minutes straight. And we're just like just something about it just really, hit the spot.
All right,
Okay.
we'll bring this
Garfield.
back to the Avengers and the Marvel movies. The guy who started it, Tony Stark, hot or not?
Okay. I don't know. He doesn't do it for me. He's
Too old for me.
Too old.
Yeah.
Sorry, this sounds really funny, being that I don't know if anyone knows how tall Andy is. Tony Stark's too short.
Oh, go Andy.
He's probably taller than me.
I don't know if he is, babe. I don't.
But he's standing next to Gwyneth Paltrow, who never gets to wear heels.
That's right.
And I am standing next to you.
Yeah.
All right, Star-Lord, Andy Dwyer, Star-Lord.
Hot, very hot. He's so
Hot.
adorable. Yeah.
Definitely hot.
Okay.
Who else is
Ant-Man.
Paul Rudd.
I
You say
like
hot
him.
dog?
I actually really like Paul Rudd, and I like him. Hey, kind of as I get older, I kind of am more attracted to more like mature characters and stuff, which just makes me feel old as well. But I don't know.
We already talked about how much we love Aunt May, so
Well, there you go. Yeah, same thing. But he is very good looking. I don't know, but he doesn't totally just do it.
Yeah,
for
I mean,
me,
this
but
could
I
get
don't know.
into the old debate of like cute versus hot.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Right.
I'm just going hot as in like am attracted to them. So I will say he's got the DILF vibe, hot. Plus I grew up watching Clueless, so I know we're supposed to focus on their characters, but
Yes,
it's there.
I know, but it's true. It does fake, like it changes your way of thinking about them.
It was so weird because when like I first watched Clueless, he felt like too old for the whole
he
thing,
was.
And now it's like you were a literal baby,
Yeah, but he's old,
and he's
like,
now
older than
barely
you.
aged since then.
Yeah.
Well, and Clueless is weird because Alicia Silverstone's the only one who's like actually a teenager. I mean, Stacey Dash was like 29
or something. Yeah, yeah.
So anything with teenagers, the ages are always really weird.
All right,
That's
this one will
fair.
probably be pretty quick. I know probably how it's going to go. Doctor Strange.
Not.
There we go.
Okay. Moving on, T'Challa.
Oh, shit.
Black Panther himself.
Oh yeah, hot. Sure.
I'm gonna be controversial here, and I think he doesn't really do it for me. I get the appeal, but not for. I think we know though. I might have just been distracted by.
Yeah, you're playing favorites here.
Yeah,
I wonder
yeah,
where
let's,
he's like, was he hot in Civil War? And then by the time Black Panther rolls around, he's like running, third place
I mean,
or
he's
something.
like in his 40s, man. He's too old for me.
No, it's not. T'Challa's not that old.
I mean,
Well,
is 40
T'Challa's
that
not, but Chadwick is.
Chadwick.
Yeah.
What's his name? Chadwick what's his
Boseman.
name?
Chadwick
He's
Boseman.
in his isn't he in his 20s?
He's 42.
No, really? Well, then he looks amazing. Then, like, holy, huh?
Yeah.
How
No,
old is
he's
Killmonger?
surprisingly old.
He's 40. Yeah.
He's like Killmonger is like 30 because I have looked.
Do you know his birthday?
It was.
She celebrates it on her cast. So let's get to the final one. Let's get to why we brought Emily on. Eric Killmonger, Michael B. Jordan, hot or not?
Hot.
Yeah.
And you know what? I know a lot of people went into the.
She's broken just thinking about him.
Well, we were talking about the age. I remember I was watching Friday Night Lights, and I was like, "Oh, I got to the Michael B. Jordan," and Matt tried to be like, "Oh, gross. He was only like 17 there." I was like, "Shit, no, he's not. I know when this was made. I know he's only a few years older than I am. Liar." Nice try. Didn't work. Also, I think with Killmonger, I know a lot of people, like when the trailer came out, were sort of making fun of the weird little like dreads and dread bangs he had. But again, going back to the emo past, it worked for me. I was fine with it.
So obviously, the main thing people are thinking of Killmonger is, the showdown at the waterfall where he clearly beat the gym.
Yeah.
But what about like art house Eric Killmonger? Like that was a good fit, right?
Like, yeah, I could still go for that. Look, I'll take him.
The actual Black Panther very high because your team Killmonger was right apparently. What about M'Baku?
I'm team Killmonger was hotter. There is a difference. I'm team Nakia was right. Nakia.
Yeah, exactly. She
right.
was.
But yeah, what about
Hobby
M'Baku?
is an idiot and sucks. M'Baku. Well, we are both vegetarians, so we can, share a meal together.
You guys can go out and enjoy some fries together.
Although it's weird that they're vegetarians and wear fur, just saying. I get it's cold there, but it's a little inconsistent.
Well, I think maybe less about the animals and more, that gorillas eat vegetables.
Yes.
And, other gorillas sometimes too. Maybe he was just...
M'Baku, he's got a nice face. I'm pretty petite, so he's a little big for me. But
brazen.
Yeah.
It's big. Very large.
Could be either way. We don't know. I don't know his life.
Oh man. And we usually try to keep this as a family podcast. All right. We'll put a warning.
That's subtle. They won't know.
Okay. So I think what we have here, if I got the order right, it's conditionally hot, not emo hot. Loki is a no.
Right.
So direct your ats to Tony Stark too old, Star-Lord hot, Ant-Man cute, hot, Spider-Man too young, Doctor Strange, we'll get that out of here.
Straight no.
Black Panther, we got a hot and a not.
Yeah.
Killmonger, we got a hot and a hot. And M'Baku intimidates you.
The new king.
All right, I think that's our show. Thanks again to the ladies for appearing, making hopefully this a fun segment, if a little longer. Matt, where can people find our website?
They can find us at Infinity Stone Podcast at .wordpress.com. They can find us on Twitter at @pod_infinity. You can find us on iTunes and YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay. And next week, we've been building towards it, and now it's here. One podcast, all focused on the Avengers. And I'm psyched.
I'm really psyched.
All right. Anything else, Matt?
That's it. Roll credits.
When Captain America throws his mighty shield, all those who chose to oppose his shield must yield. If he's led to a fight and a duel is due, then the red and the white and the blue will come through when Captain America throws his mighty shield.
Hey, we forgot to talk about Hawkeye.
Wait, Hawkeye or Hawkeye?
Hawkeye. Yep.
Him,
Hawkeye.
Hawkeye.
Just like on MASH.
Right.
Hawkeye.